Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Spin Cycle. I'm Danielle Kessner, here to bring you reviews of new music, old music, whatever kind of music I really just want to do a review of. But since recently there's been a good string of excellent albums to come out, I figure I should probably talk about them and put the word out as to why these are some of the best albums by some of the best bands out there right now. And of course, as always, I am kind of a metalhead, so if you're not into metal, you're probably not going to tune into a lot of these, but at least you can look at the title and be warned. This week's episode, I'm going to be talking about the new Amorphis album, which came out last month. It's called Under the Red Cloud, and again, it's something that I downloaded digitally, not illegally, just downloaded it, okay? CDs are the past, man, okay? But let's talk about Amorphis for a minute because Amorphis is one of those bands that, isn't exactly well known in the United States. They have a pretty big following here, but nowhere near as big as some of the other bands, especially out of Finland. You've got bands like Children of Bodom and Nightwish, to name just a pair of them. But there's other bands in Finland and Scandinavia that seem to get a little bit more recognition than Amorphis, and there's probably a reason for that. And that's because Amorphis was kind of a pioneer of melodic death metal in Finland back in the late 80s, early 90s. But then fairly early on, they shifted away from death metal and more into alternative metal. Still very melodic, very folkish, but they kind of changed their sound a bit. Tales from a Thousand Lakes, which is one of their, I think it's their second album that came out, is a phenomenal album. It's absolutely phenomenal, but they really kind of evolved from that sound and they kind of went up and down. They had a little bit, they had a couple of albums that were, amazing, and then they had a few that were kind of flat as they played with their sound and they tried some different things. As much as I like, albums like Tuonela and Universum, those are ones that they kind of went in a weird direction. Um, but they found their way back when they brought in their new singer, whose name I can't pronounce. Most Finnish names I can't pronounce. I really wish I knew Finnish right now. But when they brought him in, and on their that album, Eclipse, they basically changed again. And the way they changed is sort of what we have today with Amorphis, and it's what makes them not only one of my favorite bands, but one of the best bands producing music now. Which is, it's not so much melodic death metal anymore. There is still some death metal vocals in it, and some of their songs are pretty heavy, but for the most part, it's this sort of alternative folk metal that really just balances the stories that they like to tell. A lot of their stories come from Finnish mythology, and their kind of folkish metal sound. um, their last album that came out is called Circle, and if you haven't heard Circle, you should, because it's freaking amazing. And it's actually the album that got me into Amorphis. So I'm really young to Amorphis. I haven't been listening to them for very long, but Circle is the album that just like hooked me, because you had a song like The Wanderer, which really just it's not a super metal song. It's actually kind of a radio friendly song, but it's also just a fantastic track. And then you get into the rest of the album and it's amazing. So then the question was, how are they going to follow up Circle, which was phenomenal? Just as a complete album, Circle was, it was brilliant. It was probably the best album. I'm gonna back off there. Skyforger is their best album, but it was pretty close. So the question is, how do they follow that up? It's kind of like what I said in the Iron Maiden episode. How do you follow up something amazing, something you've been doing for decades? How do you keep that alive? How do you keep that alive? They answered it. And that answer is Under the Red Cloud. This album is mind blowing. And I'm not just saying that because, I can. I'm saying that because it actually is a mind blowing album. When they started off, it's with the title track Under the Red Cloud. And it starts off, kind of melodic, symphonic, and then it just builds into it and just builds into that amorphous that we've come to know and love. And it just blows you away. and they do it so well with mixing the kind of old death metal elements, mixing those in with their newer sound, their newer direction, where it's a little bit more alternative, not nearly as aggressive, but doesn't skimp on that metal sound. And so when they start off with Under the Red Cloud, you know that this album is going to be something special, because just right off the bat, all of their elements are working in perfect unison. And they just rattle them off like one after another. You have songs like Bad Blood, Sacrifice, Tree of Ages. The way they close it out with the song White Night, which actually has some guest vocals, some female vocals that are just hauntingly beautiful. And it just this album is so well encompassed, and just like when you put all the elements together, you play the songs, it's such a solid album. And it's hard to imagine that they could outdo Circle, but I think they might have succeeded here only in one aspect, and that is that the songs are just on par with what we have come to expect from Amorphis, with this just like solid folk metal, alternative metal sound that they've built upon over the past, decade. But where it succeeds is as a complete album. I'm not saying Circle is not a complete album, but this one really feels like it is like all just one big song. It's just all meant to go together. And even if you throw in the bonus tracks that they have offered on some of these, um, come to spring, and winter sleep, both of those are superb songs. But where the album really shines is in that middle, in the middle part, where it just there's three songs in a row, just one, two, three, that are unreal. Death of a King, which I believe was their first single off the album. Metal bands don't have singles in the same way that other bands do, or other artists do. I mean, they'll release a song that people kind of get. They'll do a video for it maybe, but it's not the same as like, okay, this is the single that we're putting at the top of the charts kind of thing. It's just kind of the teaser for the rest of the album. That's what I love about metal, is that they'll have a single, and you'll get that. It's definitely one that'll draw you in, but the point of that single is really to just like, okay, this is the sound that we're going to play with. We're going to put that then in the album and let you decide how it fits, if it fits nicely. And in this case, Death of a King fits beautifully in this album, especially when it's followed up immediately by Sacrifice. And then probably my favorite track on the album is called Dark Path, and this is one that it's aggressive, but it's also subdued, beautiful, melodic. All the things that Amorphis has done right on albums like Skyforger and Circle, it is in full force here. And Dark Path might be the most iconic song in all that. Um, I mean, they've released, I think, two or three other songs as singles. I know Sacrifice was released as a single. I'm not sure what other ones they've done as singles. But Dark Path to me is just, this is the epitome of what the album is. This is the Sky Forger of this album, or the Into the Abyss. I mean, it is the song that like defines the album, and just it like puts it all together, gives you that emotional core of what the album is. And I think Dark Path is absolutely the best song on the album. But to say that it stands out, and the rest of the album is just sort of iffy, would be unfair, because this is not just as an Amorphous album, but just as a complete album of music. This is phenomenal, and I highly recommend it. I highly recommend it. Even with Iron Maiden coming out this year, this could very well be the best album I've heard this year. And there's been some good stuff that's come out this year. It has not been a bad year for music. This has been a great year for music, actually. But a song like this is what an album like this just it's a remarkable one. And if you're not into Amorphous, this might not be the starting point, but if it is, I guarantee you're going to be an Amorphous fan for a long time. And if they keep putting out music like this, they better get their asses to America to do some touring. That's all I'm saying. But so Amorphous, Under the Red Cloud, check it out. If you're not sure, Give it a listen though. Listen to some of the songs on YouTube, especially Dark Path. But Death of a King, Under the Red Cloud, Sacrifice, those are all fantastic tracks too. But just check it out, listen to it, enjoy it because it is a beautiful, absolutely mesmerizing album. So thanks a lot for watching. See you next time.